Hey there. I don't really know why I'm posting this. Maybe I just need to get it off my chest. Or maybe I need anyone to hear me out. Because this is not something you talk about with your friends or family. But here I am, sharing it. So, I'm married. But let me tell you, sometimes even the most perfect seeming relationships can hide the feeling of betrayal. And I'm not just talking about the kind of betrayal that happens when someone sleeps with someone else. It's more about that deeper slow burn of feeling like you're losing yourself. My husband and I have been together for over 10 years. We met back in 2012 at the University of Washington in Seattle. It all seemed so perfect, that kind of textbook college romance. He was dependable, stable, always there when I needed him. And I guess that's why I fell for him. But after a while I began to notice the cracks. The passion that had once been there just wasn't anymore. We had the house, we had the routine. We'd go to work, come home, make dinner, talk about the future, repeat. It was safe, comforting, but boring. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I started feeling like I was living someone else's life. I was working hard, trying to build my career, but inside it felt like I was fading into the background. Like my dreams didn't matter anymore. The spark I had when I was younger? Gone, and I hated myself for feeling that way. Everything changed one night, though. August 2023, I went on a corporate trip to New York with some colleagues. It was one of those big work events, the kind you're supposed to go to just to network and schmooze. I wasn't expecting anything to happen, just another boring business trip, but then I met him. His name was Nate. He was from another department and we'd only briefly talked before. But over the next couple of days, I found myself looking forward to every conversation with him. We'd talk about work at first, but then we started talking about life. And it felt real. Like he got me in a way no one else did. He wasn't like my husband, all stable and predictable. He was spontaneous, funny, and effortlessly cool in a way that made me feel alive again. I started feeling seen. I didn't want to admit it, but I was hooked. Every time I got a text from him, my heart would race. And when I went back to Seattle, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I should have known better, but I didn't stop myself. I met him again a few weeks later when I had to go to Los Angeles for work. This time, things escalated quickly. After a few drinks and some deep talks, we kissed. And man, I can't even explain what happened next. It wasn't just a kiss. It was like the floodgates opened and I finally felt alive again. That spark that I'd been missing for years. It was back, bigger than ever. I was in way over my head, but at the time, I didn't care. It was the night of 12th September 2023 in Los Angeles. The evening had been a whirlwind of laughter, cocktails, and deep conversations. It felt surreal, like everything else had faded away, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could just breathe. We had been talking for hours, Nate and I. At first, it was the usual small talk. How's work? What are your plans? What brought you here? But as the night went on, the conversation shifted. They became more personal, more real. He had this ability to make you feel seen, to make you feel like your struggles mattered. I hadn't felt that in so long. We sat at a small table in the back corner of a dimly lit bar, the buzz of other conversations and clinking glasses creating an almost intimate cocoon around us. The low lighting was soft, the golden glow of the city stretching out beyond the windows. It felt like everything in the world had stopped, like we were the only two people in it. I remember feeling nervous at first. There was a tension in the air, something unspoken. I could feel it, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. It was dangerous. I shouldn't have been feeling what I was feeling. But there it was. Every smile he gave me, every time his hand brushed mine, it sent something through me, something I hadn't felt in years. Something sharp, something alive. And then it happened. One moment we were talking about some random thing, and the next, his eyes locked with mine, and everything else disappeared. His gaze was intense, but it wasn't aggressive. There was a softness to it, a tenderness that made my heart race. He leaned in just slightly, the warmth of his breath brushing my cheek, and I knew right then, without a doubt, that this wasn't just an ordinary night. He didn't ask for permission. His hand moved to mine, fingers sliding gently over mine, testing the waters. I froze for a second, my breath catching in my throat. But then something inside me, the part that had been dormant for too long, stirred and I responded. I let my fingers curl around his, and it felt electric. A charge ran through me, a fire that started low in my stomach and spread quickly to every inch of my skin. His thumb traced the back of my hand, slow and deliberate. It wasn't about the touch. It was about what it awakened in me. I felt desired. I felt wanted. Not like I was someone's wife or someone's partner, but like I was me, raw, unfiltered, and real. I hadn't felt that in so long. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought I might actually explode with longing. Without saying a word, he leaned closer. I could smell the faint hint of his cologne. Earthy, woody, something I could easily get lost in. And then he kissed me. Soft at first, a gentle press of his lips against mine, as if he was testing the waters too, and then it deepened. And I found myself responding without hesitation, without thought. I kissed him back like I had been waiting my whole life for this moment, for this release. I felt the years of suppressed desire, the weight of a routine life, melt away in that instant. It wasn't just physical, it was everything. His lips moved against mine with a hunger I hadn't known I'd been craving. It was raw. It was desperate. It was everything I had been missing. The way he held me, the way he made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered at that moment, it was intoxicating. Every brush of his hand, every flicker of his touch sent me further into something I had no intention of diving into. But it was like my body knew what I needed before my mind could catch up. I could feel my heart beating faster, louder, in my chest. I could feel my breath becoming shallow, quick, desperate. The kiss wasn't just a kiss anymore, it was a drowning. I was drowning in this moment, in him, in everything that had been missing from my life. I felt the need to pull away, to stop, to remind myself of what I was doing. But I didn't want to. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep feeling this. I wanted to feel alive again. And then, when we finally pulled away, our faces inches apart, the world seemed to return around me. Sounds, lights, everything. But it felt distant, muffled, like I was hearing it from underwater. I was shaken. I knew this was wrong, but I didn't feel regret. Not then, not when I still felt the rush of everything we had just shared coursing through me. Are you sure? He asked softly, his voice almost a whisper. And in that moment, it felt like everything hinged on that question. It wasn't just about the kiss. It was about everything I'd been suppressing for so long. I nodded, and the look in his eyes said it all. We didn't need words anymore. It wasn't just about desire. It was about me, finally breaking free from the weight of expectations from the life I had built. I was free, even if it was just for a few stolen moments. That night, I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about my husband back in Seattle, about what this would mean for my marriage. All I could think about was how alive I felt, how real everything felt in that instant. The guilt would come later, but in that moment, I was only aware of the way his lips felt against mine, the way his hands held me, and the way I finally felt seen. When it was over, when I left the bar and headed back to the hotel, my mind was a whirlwind. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what this meant, but I knew one thing. It had felt incredible. And as terrible as that might sound, I couldn't deny it. I had crossed a line I never thought I would, and now I couldn't go back. The next day, everything shifted. I went back to Seattle, and it wasn't long before the truth came out. My husband, always meticulous and detail-oriented, had checked my phone while I was in the shower. He found the messages, the photos, the traces of everything I had tried so hard to hide. His face when he confronted me was something I will never forget. Angry, shattered, betrayed. The divorce was swift. He demanded everything, our house, the savings, even our vacation plans. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a war. The court battles stretched on for months, each day heavier than the last. His lawyer was relentless, and though I fought to keep some of what we built together, in the end, he walked away with more than I could have imagined. Now, here I am, alone, living in a small apartment, trying to pick up the pieces of a life I shattered. The hardest part? I don't know if I regret it, not fully. It felt wrong, yes, but it also felt real, and that's something I'm not sure I'll ever be able to shake.